So welcome everyone. My name is Bill Guyton and I'm the Executive Director of the Fine Chocolate Industry Association, or FCIA. And I wanted to also introduce my colleague, Effie Malgares. And Effie, if you could please put your video screen on just for a minute so people can see you. Effie's done a wonderful job at helping to organize this event, and we really appreciate all of her efforts. We're really excited about the webinar today. The title is Post-Harvest Practices to Maximize Flavor in the Dominican Republic. And we have over 140 people registered for this event and others that are on the waiting list. So I think it's a really popular topic, and we've got some true experts today to help walk us through this virtual tour. So the event will be hosted by FCIA member Kahkow, and over the next hour, we'll have the opportunity to have a virtual tour of their facilities in the Dominican Republic. I wanted just to mention to all of the participants today, if you could please post your questions in the Q&A section, and we are going to answer the questions during the last 15 minutes of the session. So we won't be able to continually answer your questions, but we ask that you post in the Q&A and not the chat. And please feel free to ask your questions in English or Spanish. Before we turn to our panelists today, I wanted just to mention very briefly some upcoming events that FCIA has hosted for next week. We have actually two webinars, one on Wednesday, which is Fall Trends in Fine Chocolate, and FCIA has partnered with École Chocolat on that webinar, and you won't want to miss that. It's again on Wednesday next week. And on Thursday, we have another very interesting webinar, educational series topic on the B Corp certification, and Valrhona, French Broad, Uncommon, Cacao, and Lake Champlain will all give their perspectives on the value for being B Corp certified. So again, some very interesting topics for next week. So we hope you all can join, and please make sure to try and register at least 48 hours in advance of the webinar. So, but now we'd like to turn to our featured speakers today, and it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Hector Rizek, who I've known for several years. He is the CEO head of Rizek, and will give a bit of an overview about cacao in the Dominican Republic before we do the virtual tour. So, Hector, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Good morning to all of the FCIA participants into the webinar. It's a pleasure for us and a great opportunity to share our cocoa passion with all of you today. It's very interesting because we will have two sides seen. Before we go on, I'd like to make you a little bit of history of how we became a factory of flavors and aromas. Our family tradition started in 1905, arriving into the Dominican Republic. I have the honor to be the fourth generation of our family in the Dominican Republic. From 1905 until 1995, we were basically cocoa producers and cocoa bean exporters, mainly to the USA. As you are aware, in 1996, the slow food movement started, and then chocolate was upgraded to healthy, gourmet, and unique product, right entering the year 2000. That was very important because at the moment we were thinking, how can we convert the Dominican Republic into an important player into this new order of chocolate producing? It was the born of the fine dark chocolate, and we were. At the moment, at that time, the Dominican Republic was one of the few countries where we were not fermenting cacao. So cacao was produced in the Dominican Republic, and it was basically thrown to be dried. Even though the Dominican Republic had the best genetical influence before, but we were not taking advantage of that situation. So many questions came to us. How do we teach the farmers to become an important quality producer, fermenting cacao the proper way and drying the proper way? It's quite an adventure for us. So we say, wow, it's going to be a tough job to educate these people where they have generation of doing the process in a certain way. So we, at that moment, that was the starting point for us of the factory of flavors and aromas and color that you will see today in San Francisco de Macorís. We decided to take control of the post-harvest process because it was so difficult to teach the farmers to do the post-harvest once they were used to it. We were not in Ghana, we were not in other countries of Africa where they respected the fermentation process and the protocol in a proper way. So it was, we decided to take control of the post-harvest. So that was one of the best decisions, strategic decision that we took. At that time, also the question was how we will ferment so thousands of metric tons of cocoa beans as solids. Wow, it was going to be very challenging because it's so easy to ferment liquids. It's so easy to ferment wine and beer because you put them on in a tank. So we had all those questions. And that's how we came with this center of transformation, which is today called CETICO, which is the site that you will see Massimiliano, Nadia, and Elvis after I finish. By the end of this presentation, I hope that you can judge the percentage that you will weigh to the post-harvest process. For us, it's the most important of all, but we would like, our job today is to show you the importance of the post-harvest in order for you to weigh into what we call the quality pyramid of the process. How much do you weigh to the terroir? How much do you weigh to the genetical type? How much you will weigh to the industrial process? And how much you will weigh to the harvest process, to the post-harvest process. Before I address the post-harvest, it's important to share with you that we develop a concept called total quality control into the cacao post-harvesting process, where we wanted to trace everything and to monitor all the process since we opened the pot. Before I address post-harvest, we have to talk about pre-harvest. Pre-harvest, we have to make sure that we collect the cocoa pods, the cabosas, in a proper level of ripeness. As you are aware and will see, we need to standardize the level of ripeness, because there is where we will obtain the sugar that we need for the fermentation. So before we go into what is fermentation, it is very important when we open the pots, because the oxidation that starts right after we expose the bean to light, we have to monitor and to control. We have to cut the pot and everything, but when we open the pot is when this chocolate passion starts, and is where all the perfection about the process starts. Fermentation, then, after we explain a little bit about the pre-harvest. The fermentation, what is fermentation at the end? Fermentation is many things happening into these cocoa beans. I don't know if you are aware, but right after the cocoa bean is exposed to light and the oxidation starts, the cocoa bean suffers a fever. This fever is unique. That's why we call that the fermentation is a temperature raise. So we need to make sure that during the process, we raise the temperature to a level that is already specified. This is a sweating, we call curado in Spanish, but it's a curing process or treated process. This is where the yeast mixed with the sugar start all of these biochemical reactions that drive us to aromas, flavors, and colors. I also mention colors because fermentation for us is a race of color. That's why you will see in the box that we need to make sure that uniformity happens into the cocoa fermentation process. That's why you will see why is the reason to change, to remove from one box to the other into every 24 hours or every 48 hours, depending whether you are fermenting for 4, 5, or 6 days. So fermentation is the crush that makes this passion of chocolate unique. Because playing with the time, with the temperature, with the sugar, we have to protect as much pulp as we can in order to come out with a unique chocolate. Right after we finish fermentation, and also in fermentation, we have to remember that we kill the embryo of the beans by giving the bean gets bigger and grows while it's suffering this fever. So we make sure that the bean also kills the embryo. And that's why it leaves us with the browns that we need. We need to look for this uniformity of colors of the bean. And all of those things happen during the fermentation. As much sugar as we have, the better product that we'll have in terms of complexity and unique aromas and flavor. After the fermentation, we have the drying. We are bringing the humidity level and we are taking water out of the beans. Since the moment we open the pot, if we have a 50% of water, we are bringing it down to a level a range between 10 and 15, 12 and 15 humidity level once we finish fermentation. Then we start drying. Drying before we fermented beans, it was also, before drying, we had a process called accidental fermentation when we didn't ferment before. So, but when we ferment the beans, drying, we need to bring the level slowly. This is one of the most beautiful process of the post-harvest, because as a slow cook happens into the chocolate maker, we don't need to rush the drying process, because remember that we have acids inside the beans. If we have those acids, we need to pull them out together with the water slowly, so we cannot speed up the drying process in a way that creates us bad attributes at the end for the final chocolate making. So slow drying is as important as the fermentation. And the more here we play with different, trying to maintain the cocoa beans as stable as possible until the final 5 days of drying. So the Reyes then feel that the post-harvest process is as important because we feel that the Dominican Republic didn't have the best genetical types, similar to Ecuador, similar to Venezuela, where they have the criollos. They help us, it helps you a lot into the pyramid that I mentioned, but it doesn't, if you don't prepare and you don't have the total quality process, at the end, you don't play around properly if you don't respect the protocol that we mentioned you in terms of the post-harvest. So for the chocolate makers, the post-harvest, as I mentioned you before, is the most important of all. We, the Reyes, call ourselves like we want to become the main ingredient of the fine chocolate industry. We claim ourselves also to be, we want to be like the Intel inside of the top chocolate makers. Because as you are aware, I'm referring to Chloé Dutré-Roussel, which all of you know, the chocolate industry, I claim the post-harvest the most important because all of these fill-ups of the chocolate industry up to let's say year 2001 to 2002 was to offset the astringency, to offset all the bad attributes of a bad post-harvest. So that's why it's like bowing for us. We treat the bean as a human, as a live product, because this is where everything starts. If we have a perfect post-harvest, we only need to add a little bit of sugar, because we will then say that we are really producing fine dark chocolate. So that is our vision. For all of you chocolate makers, craft chocolate makers, high-end chocolate makers, fine dark chocolate makers, post-harvest is crucial. Because when you have the post-harvest, you are not afraid of showing up 80%, 90%, because you will allow cocoa bean and the chemical reactions of the fermentation and dryness to express themselves into the beautiful and all the complex flavors, the lung in the mouth, all the pleasure sensations that chocolate brings, besides all the positive healthy attributes that chocolate can have. So for us, we promote, that's why we promote dark fine chocolate. That's why we promote chocolate as less sugar as possible, because when we respect this process, we have the best outcome into chocolate. I want Massimiliano, Nadia, and Elvis to talk to you about the importance of the microbiology, which is wine type developing the arm to develop the aromas and flavors. So I want you guys to listen to them because they will explain it to you in a proper way. And I hope that I explain you our vision and the importance of the post-harvest. And I hope that you have a good take-home value at the end of the webinar. Sorry that I went over the 10 minutes, but chocolate is in our blood. We feel very proud of what we are doing in the Dominican Republic, of what we are doing in the cocoa world, of what we are proposing to the chocolate. And for the long run, we feel that you guys, chocolate makers, and the fine chocolate industry is going where the taste is going to be the main driver. And let me tell you that in order for us, or in order for you to make a chocolate to be worth $100 a bar, $200 a bar, the post-harvest is the proper way, because that's where we will be respecting the total process quality control that I explained you. Thank you very much, and we are open to question and answer whenever you guys are ready. We would love to explain more, but next time, with more time, we are more than pleased to share with you this thing that drives us for generations. And I have the pleasure to also share with you that our know-how on human capital, when we started in the year 2000, transforming the Dominican Republic into this main provider of fine cacaos, we hired the best there was in the world in terms of cocoa. And we feel very proud of the human capital, the know-how of our people. And that's our first investment, because research and development, innovation, all of those play an important role, but our human capital was key role. Also, that combination that we have, a family tradition, as I told you in the beginning, I have the honor of being fourth generation. Nadia and many other members of the families are already into fifth generation. So we like the Reyes, we like to be into the chocolate world for the long run. And what we are proposing basically is to allow the cacao bean to express sensations that are unique. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Rizek, thank you so much for that introduction. And we have the field team from Kahkow that is now ready to give the tour, the virtual tour of the facility. So Max, over to you.
Everyone, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Oh, very good. I'm here with Nadia and with Elvi, who is our production manager. And after Hector's thorough explanation about the post-harvest, here we are to guide you through a virtual tour of our fermentation and drying facility. Now, we are in the place where the trucks arrive. Here we have our dumping stations. That is where the cocoa beans are delivered by the farmers, either in trucks or in smaller means of transportation. Here, the first quality assessment is carried out. And what the parameters that are registered are, of course, the origin, hence the genetics, the terroir, and then the pH and the bricks. And then, of course, all the certifications. This is where all the traceability begins, and it is the first step for making up our recipes or batches for every individual client. As Hector mentioned, we are not exporting raw materials anymore, but bespoke and cacao made to measure. Kahkow USA is one of our clients.
Kahkow USA is one of our latest projects, which we will be talking about in a few minutes.
Exactly. And for us, every customer is equally as important. We have customers who buy 3 or 4 bags per year, and we have customers who buy a few thousand metric tons. But we learn for all of them, and we work for all of them. So the cacao is dumped here, and then thanks to conveyor belt, it is driven. It is taken to the fermentation lines. Please follow me. Let us pretend we are cacao. If instead of big trucks, our supplier delivers in a moped, in a donkey, or whatever other means, then the cacao is dumped manually in that smaller dumping station. I'll let you imagine the smell here. It's a bit acidic, but fruity at the same time, but it doesn't ferment, it doesn't smell like anything rotten. So hygiene is really very important. And here are the two conveyor belt lines that take the cacao ultimately to the fermentation boxes. Very important at this stage, depending on the origin of the beans, on their quality, and on the physical and chemical parameters, Mr. Elvi, our production manager, who stays there in that sort of birdcage office, he prepares the batch, and the batch is consigned into a plastified card. So the card is then dropped up to this point of the pipe. So there are two cards, one for the beginning of the batch and one for the final part of the batch, in order to identify the cacao visually. So the two plastic cards are taken by the operator, and one is put at the beginning of the flow of cacao, beginning of the streak, and one at the end. And we will find these cards up to the very end of the process, up to the exportation. This is our wall, and we're crossing here the keep-off zone, where only a few persons, and the FCIA, of course, are welcome to enter. Please feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. ¿Me está escuchando? Okay. Going to the bean cleaning. Some of the bags, some of the cacao is actually brought into the center in these boxes. These boxes were not intended initially for cacao, but for the grape and the wine industry. It allows for a cleaner process, less manual work. These are the cleaning lines. This is what we separate from the cacao when it comes. Cluster beans, placentas, all the rest of the dirt. These sieves vibrate, and the cacao is separated. The fresh beans go down, and then all the cluster beans and the foreign matter is separated and it stays on top. I'll ask Elvi to turn it on. This is a crucial part of the process, because it is much easier and very beneficial to clean the cacao before it is fermented, so that no foreign matter ferments. This is how they vibrate. It's okay. Unfortunately, we cannot show you our full lines, because we are between crops, so there's very little cacao at this point. Now, we have a pretty long walk up to the fermentation lines. Meanwhile, you can see our quality control laboratory, which is downstairs, and then we have an apartment for students, researchers, to stay for some time and carry out their studies. The center was built in 2006, and every year we add a brick, a part, an extension, a satellite, an improvement, a tweak. So it's a never-ending process. While we walk, we can pass. Yes, let us transit inside a dryer, even if we address the drying afterwards. I'm walking quickly, so the camera has a hard time following me. Oh, okay. Thank you. There, Nadia. Okay. I'm ready. This is one of our dryers, and you don't know, but it really works. It's really hot inside. As you can see, the tiles are perforated. Since this is an empty one, you can appreciate the detail better. The roof is in polycarbonate, and as you can see, there's a corridor. And okay, I got it. Okay. Ya no escucho nada.
Great, Max. If you're on mute again, we can see the
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you, Max.
Okay, very well. I was just showing you a cut test of this cacao, which we are very proud of. We were able, after years and years of efforts, to bring back a varietal that was planted into the DR in the 17th century, which is white cacao. Normally it is called Criollo, even if after Montemayor study in 2010, it's not appropriate to call it Criollo. However, it has all the characteristics of what we know as white cacao and Criollo cacao. And as you can see, this is perfectly white inside. This is the third box. This cacao has spent here 5 days, 1, 2, and 2, 1 in the first, 2 in the second, and it is due out in a few moments. Okay, this is then one type of fermentation line that we can see here. We also use the wooden boxes. Some customers prefer the wooden boxes. I'd say the difference in taste between a white plastic box and the wooden is that the plastic box does not interfere with the fermentation. Basically, what happens is the cacao ferments just for itself and for the yeast and bacteria that are inside. Whereas with the boxes, the wooden boxes, there is an interaction. There is a play between the cacao and the box. So it does give a different flavor, a deeper flavor, sometimes heavier flavor. You might like it or not. So it really depends. Then this is another type of fermentation box for shorter fermentations, 2 or 4 days.
So while we're waiting for the audio to come back, maybe Hector, we could ask if you could answer that question that I asked earlier on about do you have a harvest every 14 days or so on a piece of land to ensure only optimum ripeness is found?
The ripeness, we have to cut, we propose the farmer to cut the pods when they are all ripe. You have a choice also. Right after you cut the pod, as long as you cut them ripe, you can extend them, and you will have more sugar. If you decide to, within the recipe of the chocolate makers, that you want more sugar inside, then you can, after you cut the pod, you can use any amount of days. It could be 5 days, the same day, or 10 days in order to get more sugar. But sometimes the farmer, when he's collecting the pod, the level of ripeness is not already ripe. So then you have to separate in order for them to wait until they are properly ripe. But you play around with the level of ripeness, because then that is also, that's when the what I call the pre-harvest.
Great, Hector.
We switched phones. The other one was heating up because of the weight under the sun. So we switched phones. Should be working right now.
Okay, perfect. And thank you for responding to that last question. And now, Max, back over to you for the continuation of the tour.
Exactly. So as you can see, this is our fermentation lines. There are several types of boxes. The duration can be changed. How long the cacao spends in every box also is another parameter. How much oxygen is allowed to be inside the boxes, and the mixing, all of this mixed with the genetics and the origin, the terroir, gives a lot of parameters we can play with in order to tune the flavors, as Hector was indicating in his introduction. Okay, let us go then to see a third box. Follow me, Elvi, insegna me. There's some cacao in second box, so you can appreciate how the workers mix the cacao and transfer it from one box to the other. This is an unloading conveyor. So the boxes are open, this is flipped open, and the cacao is pushed with a shovel onto the conveyor belt and then unloaded, and from here to the dryers. Some birds tweeting. Okay. Elvi. Tú sube. Oh, la va a remover ahora. Okay, they're going to mix. Lo prestamos a Elvi. Elvi, agarra. I wouldn't say it depends on the plastic or on the wood, and temperature is sometimes overrated as an indicator for fermentation. In any case, let us say that the temperature actually becomes on how oxygenated the fermentation is allowed to be, as opposed to how lengthy or the material. So you can have very hot fermentations, very warm, up to 52 degrees, either in plastic or in wood. But the question is, do we really want super hot fermentations or not? And probably not, because the microorganisms that survive high temperatures normally are bacteria that bring about off flavors, like butyric fermentations, fermentation of the fats. The smell must always be fresh and vinegary and fruity. Whenever you have a smell like smells like animal, urine, or wood or leather, that's a bad indication. Okay. Yes, you can see. Well, the size is approximately, the capacity is around 15,000 metric tons of dry cacao per year. And the idea, as Hector indicated in his masterful presentation, is to be able to play with the aromas, tune the post-harvest in order to get the best of the wet beans that are entering the fermentation. And one of the reasons why we need this type of facility is that there is no tradition, no infrastructure of fermentation in the Dominican Republic. And therefore, it would be very difficult to lend this infrastructure to the farmers and to teach 50,000 families how to do it. And frankly speaking, in terms of capital investment, they couldn't afford it. And therefore, it is best for us, as we become responsible for the cacao that we're producing, and it is absolutely best also for the farmers, since the cacao, as far as it is wet, it's always perfect. So there are no refactions, no quality discounts, or nothing, and they get their money approximately 1 month earlier than they would have gotten if they had sold it as a dry product. Okay. Let us go now to the drying very quickly. Elvi was dryer number 59. Let's go to dryer 59. Over here, we'll take a shortcut. Por aquí, vamos. Por allá. Okay.
Max, sí, para que vayamos al question and answers.
Yes, please. If you have any questions, while we move to the dryers.
When you finish the drying, let's settle so we can answer many questions that they have.
Yeah, I still have to show them the packaging that we are using for small chocolate makers and for Kahkow USA.
And maybe, Max, while you're walking, we can ask you a
Yes.
quick question.
Absolutely.
Here's a question coming in from Anonymous. 2 questions. One is, what will be the flavor difference between fermenting 4 days versus 5 days versus 6 days?
Okay, I can give you an answer based on rough approximations, because every cacao comes with different aroma precursors. But keeping all parameters fixed, a 4-day fermentation will give you a nutty taste, a bit of a stringent green grassy flavor, and very little cacao flavor. 5 days will tend towards the fruitiness, and some cacao flavor. And 6 days will give you something deeper in flavor, a bit more woody, cacao-y, and a more rounded taste. But as I said, it really depends on the type of cacao you're fermenting. If you are fermenting white cacao, as we've seen before in that box, then your best choice could be to ferment between 4 and maximum 5, because you don't want heavier flavors. You want to keep all the lighter aromas.
Great,
I hope that
you.
answers the question. You can see it here, the mixing, they're using Reyes, and this is a second stage of cleaning. You saw in the vibrating tables how we clean by hand, and the operators are doing the same here. While they rake and they mix, they're also taking away all the foreign matters and cluster beans. And this is the card I was mentioning at the beginning, which identifies every single batch. Here I have a batch number, the date, and then a code, which is known only by a few of us, so that there is confidentiality as to how a certain cacao is prepared, number of boxes, and the expected dry output. Here we are. Good. Let's go now to the triage, the drying, and the packaging. Let us cross another dryer, and then I'll leave the microphone to Nadia. This fermentation center, as I said, was founded in 2006, and it was probably 1/4 of the capacity we have right now. And on top of the capacity, we have also grown in knowledge, I'd say. We have hosted many PhDs have been studied and written here. We have scientists coming from all over the world stay with us, and they learn from us and we learn from them. And that was precisely the purpose of the apartment that I showed you a few minutes ago. This is the triage area. Triage means selection. That is where the cacao that it is unloaded from the drying beds is finally taken to the final drying in the artificial drying, where the 1 or 2% excessive moisture is taken out, definitely. So a forklift takes these white boxes, there it is, and then flip the boxes inside this hopper, and from this hopper through that conveyor belt, the cacao goes to the final drying in the drum dryers. Let us go, follow. The cacao will take a shortcut. Very good. If you have any questions while I'm walking, please do. I'm mute un momento.
The percentage of beans that are well fermented maximize flavor, as in what is the ideal fermentation percentage to aim for?
Let us put it this way. Unmute. Maximize flavor by fermenting, but it is not a direct consequence of a lot. I mean, a lot of fermentation doesn't mean necessarily a lot of flavor. So every type of bean has an optimum type of fermentation which suits it. As I said, for example, an ASS and a Riba type cacao probably will be best fermented 4 days. When you're making cacao for milk chocolate, you don't want some acidity, which is brought about some type of bacteria, so you better stop the fermentation after 3 or 4 days. Whereas if you want a very deep chocolatey flavor, then you can go up to six days. So I'm sorry I cannot give you a straight answer, but the reality is more complicated than just the length of a fermentation. Okay, these are the drum dryers, which are used to finish up the cacao and take away the 1 or 2% that we were not able to take away in the drum dryers, for example, in the sun dryers. After the drum dryers, the cacao goes to that cleaning machine where the third step of cleaning is finalized. And here we're taking away all the brittle, the smaller beans, bigger beans, cluster beans that have not been separated by hand. And then in the end, the cacao is put into bags in this very simple machine that works with the counterweight, and it's either bags or super sacks of 1 metric ton. However, for smaller chocolate makers, we use a system that is called the push box, which I will show you right now. I guess that people are working on it. Nadia, no sé si tú quieres. It's up to you. No.
So this is Nadia speaking. We want to show you the push boxes that we're currently using for Kahkow USA, which is our latest project, where we bring in a few containers a year to our warehouse.
There we go.
So this is how we place the cacao in push boxes. We're currently making push boxes of 15 kilograms as well as 25 kilograms. We vacuum seal them beforehand. That way we're able to preserve the cacao well. And this way we store them in our warehouse in New York, and we are able to provide to small chocolate makers with no minimum quantity. We work with these chocolate makers in the US and abroad in order to estimate an average of their yearly production. We provide the cacao beans as well as semi-finished cacao products in the processing stage of the chocolate maker's preference. And we bring in many different recipes of cacao beans a year. This way, there are endless possibilities for chocolate makers to achieve the flavors that they want to achieve. So something we try to educate consumers on is that with Kahkow USA is that one country does not mean one flavor. And as you've seen through the post-harvesting methods, that we're able to achieve thousands of different flavors that chocolate makers can achieve in their beans. And this way, we don't want people to think that one country means one flavor. One country does not mean one flavor. Dominican Republic has so much more to offer. And that all depends on the post-harvesting methods as well as the chocolate maker's preference to which flavors they wish to enhance. There you can see the push boxes and how they're vacuum sealed in order to preserve the flavor of the beans.
Nadia, we're coming up right on the hour. We're coming up right on the hour, and I'm wondering, we are almost at 1 hour, and I'm wondering if we can conclude, can we conclude in another 10 minutes and then have a little bit of time for Q&A afterwards. Does that work?
Yes, of course. So what we can do is show the chocolate factory we have here to finish up. You can see we're seeing it from the outside, but right now you can see our two conches where we're conching the chocolate. So our factory in New York, what we do is we're experimenting with our own beans and we're making chocolate, but we mostly do chocolate to show the potential of our cacao beans. We want to show people how many different flavors they can achieve and the quality of the beans that come from the Dominican Republic. It's a factory space where we not only want to make chocolate for people to see the potential of the beans, but also to use it as a place where other chocolate makers can come in and test our beans and make their own chocolate if they wish.
Okay, Nadia, you're on mute again. There we go.
So we're going to see the quality control center right now, so that way we can finish up and ask questions there.
Fantastic.
We're in the beginning where the cacao comes in and the conveyor belts are all the way over there. And we're headed to the quality control laboratory.
So while you're walking there, Nadia, there's some questions that are coming in about the drying trays and what material those are made out of.
Hello?
Yes. Question was asked earlier on about the drying trays and what the drying trays are made out of.
So what's the question again?
What material is the base of the drying trays?
Those are those that you saw are tile ceramics, but remember, like we are cooking chocolate since the beginning. Within the post-harvest, you can use wood, you can use all types, because every material that you use provides you with a different result. So we are not in a position to tell you this is best or whatever. It's a matter of the recipe to the person who asked the question. So wood is good, tile, ceramic is good. What you saw is a tile ceramic. But
Right.
we have all types, because every recipe, remember that Massimiliano mentioned made to measure. Every recipe that we provide, it has the unique characteristic. But when you are cooking cacao bean and chocolate, everything gives you a different result. And that's the beauty of all the process about chocolate. Everything that you play around with, you come out with a different, with a final result.
Great, thank you.
Now they are showing you the cut test.
Yes.
This is where you measure the percentage of fermentation, which range bound. I think it was the question, how much fermentation in a normal recipe for fermented beans you should get between 80 to 90, because that is the end result and tell you that you did a very good fermentation process. Obviously, yes, you are always looking for perfection. The more fermented, like Matt say, it's good, but depending on what you're looking, because we are able to naturally manipulate the post-harvest in order to produce acidic or without acidic, or to avoid all the bad attributes of to allow a little bit of acidic or whatever. So every recipe is different, but everything in chocolate is good because the consumer dictates what he's looking for. When you bring it to the mouth is when you really, we go backward. In order, who drives is the consumer. He's looking for certain flavors that we try to adapt and we try to produce for them.
Yeah, so you have three types of cut tests. Cut test is the more traditional type of quality assessment. Of course, it's not enough. So what we do is also taste on every drying bed that you have seen on every batch. This is a very well fermented cacao. As you can see, the colors are brown and it's deeply wrinkled. The beans are deeply wrinkled. Is it the best cacao? It really depends, as Hector indicated, on the type of flavor you're after. This here in the middle is a slightly less fermented cacao, which does not mean that it is not good, but look at the flavors. This purple means less fermentation. This is brown, deeper fermentation, and this is almost slaty, which means no fermentation at all. This is a Sanchez bean. Exactly. Whereas this is a light breaking cacao, very difficult to judge because of the color. You cannot say that it is fermented or unfermented. For example, this whiter bean is probably under fermented, but this is what we want, because we want here to preserve the nutty taste, the almond-like taste, which would go away if you over ferment it. And this is the liquor that we do on every single batch, because a cacao cannot just be judged by the color, by the looks of it. It needs to be tasted. And in most cases, we do have a sample for every customer. So we need to look for a match between our liquor and what is asked by the customers. Sometimes it's the customer who asks us a particular flavor profile, or sometimes the customer is just looking for something different and we work out on a recipe together. And these are the equipment, different pieces of equipment that we use for the roasting. These are drum roasters. This is a winnower. So we basically make a liquor for every single batch, as I said. And this is a convection oven, which is used for other types of roasting. Very simple. And this is our traceability software. We developed it ourselves, and every data that comes out during the process, from the very beginning up to the end, is uploaded to the system. I'd say we should go to the Q&A, right? Yeah. Let's go.
Okay.
Great. Well,
again, Max, so the telephone is okay for you and Nadia to answer together with me, please.
Great. First of all, I'd just like to thank again the team at Rizek and Kahkow for this great presentation. I know that there were some challenges on the technology side moving through the facility, and that's to be expected. I think we saw a lot of territory. The facility is large, and thank you to everyone on the call for your patience as we went through a few dead zones along the way. So we want to get to as many questions as we can. We have over 36 that are posted here, and the ones that we don't answer live, we will follow through with written responses afterwards. But one of the questions I see coming up, a repetitive question, is about fermentation, what the boxes are made out of, and how do you sanitize in between?
The boxes of fermentation, those that you saw are plastic. Wood is great, wood is traditional. And as I told you before, depending on the end product that you are looking for, but every material, wood is great, the plastic is great. It's like you compare like benchmarking each recipe or benchmarking each batch of the end result. But that's the beauty of what we do. That's why we mentioned you that we are a factory of flavors and aroma. There is no best in today's chocolate world. The consumer asks you for something, you try to make it.
And what about the sanitation between fermentation? How is that done?
The plastic is cleaner, but remember, the Massimiliano needs to talk about microbiology and Elvis. Nature plays a role. The bacteria that we have, the yeast, they live into the wood also. So we cannot be in a position to tell you today that we want clean process, because what you have inside, the bacteria helps you a lot. And the yeast, the way they interact, they need the wood. And the old wood, usually it happens in liquor and in the alcohol industry.
Great.
The wood, the older, the better. Here we have also witnessed the importance. We cannot discard wood because it was old or whatever. It also gives you pleasure sensations at the end when you do the proper fermentation.
Great. We have another question. Do you ever inoculate fermentation with controlled yeast?
We try to use as natural as possible. What we try is to protect the sugar inside. We try to protect the pulp, the juice, in order to use it properly. And you can also add yeast if you want also to produce something that is more unique, let's say.
Great. Considering the amount of juice from the baba in your plant, do you have a water treatment before release?
Yes, we do. We have to manage the water that comes out, and we clean it, but we need to protect the juice, because the juice, the pulp, is the driver of the fermentation. The pulp is the one that suffers also the fermentation, because the bean is having the fever. So we try to use it as much as possible, but we allow it to be released, because as we said, it's right after you expose the bean, we are bringing up to the chocolate roasting. Remember that I told you a while ago that we are bringing humidity from 50% to 1% at the end. So every step you have different tranches of humidity level.
There's so many wonderful questions that I see a long list of questions coming in. I'm trying to get through as many as we can. We'll go for another 5 minutes or so. What is fueling the drum dryers? Getting back to Max's virtual tour.
¿La escucha, Max? He's not hearing you. Sorry, Bill. We're having a technology issue there.
Okay. So the question, Hector, maybe you can answer this, is what is fueling the drum dryers? What fuel?
You use vapor, water.
Okay, great. When fermentation goes wrong, it smells not good. Can it be corrected?
No. If you do a bad fermentation, you have a bad product. There is no way to go back. That's why you have to be very careful, and that's why you have to respect time, because cooking is time, temperature, humidity, all of these variables play a role. What is the temp outside? It's not the same to ferment in wintertime. It's not the same to ferment in summertime. Everything is different. As Nadia and Max also mentioned, this is so sensitive to the end product that you have so many options. Besides the thousands of chemical bioreactions of the cacao itself, you also have the human control process reactions. So that's why it's so pleasure, and that's why you always discover a new flavor, because you have so many different results that you take only the positive one, and the ones that opens the market, and the one that create new flavors and aromas.
Great. We have another question coming in from Luker. They ask, is it possible to visit the Rizek plantations and facilities?
For sure, we are open, and remember to tell Luker that we are proposing as much as we can a worldwide revolution in order to produce chocolate that does not need fill up, that chocolate that is dark, that chocolate that has a high percentage of cacao content. We envision the world where there is a little bit of sugar and nothing else, just liquor, cocoa butter, cacao, and basically a little bit of sugar, nothing more. That's where we will be able to sell a chocolate bar for thousands of dollars. But when we do a perfection, total process.
Great. And what about, Hector, what about parameters for stopping the fermentation process? Do you have anything that can help stop that?
As I told you before, and Massimiliano also say, if you want to only get cocoa butter, or if you only want to get cocoa powder, because as you are aware, the chocolate industry is a big chocolate. There is demand and there is need for all types of cocoa products and derivatives, or what we call them liquor, butter, or powder. If you do, there are people who demand cocoa powder in Asia, that they want cocoa powder from unfermented beans. If you stop fermentation, then you cannot use those beans for fine chocolate.
Great. Can you hear us now, Max?
Oh, Max, Nadia, Elvis.
Good, fantastic. Well, we have, again, a couple more minutes, and I'd like just to continue on with the questions until about quarter after. The next question, cacao operates in two ways. Is this correct? As farmers for its own estate, and 2 fermenting wet mass from other farmers sold to market as consolidator trader. Are 2 harvests, both cacao versus small farmers, fermented separately or all together? And how much are small farmers paid for wet mass?
No, we provide the farmer the resource of the post-harvest. It does not matter the size. What we all require to the farmer is to bring the cocoa bean as fast as possible to the center in order to treat it as perfect as possible. The farmer is important because you can find unique characteristic of a farmer. It could be a 10-hectare farmer, or it could be a 1-hectare farmer. The revolution, the noise, and the vision that we have and that we are trying to create is basically everything is important. You can discard. In the Dominican Republic has a cocktail of Ecuadorians, a cocktail of Venezuelan, a cocktail of Trinitario, and a cocktail of Forastero. We are unique. We are able to isolate them. We are able to do blends that are unique. So everything is, as long as we do a perfect process, we have to value everything, and we are able to come with an end product that is unique.
Great. Great. Last question. We're on time, and we quickly saw this during the tour, the visual tour of the plant. But there was a computer that was showed with the software for tracking traceability, and I'm wondering, perhaps the virtual team can say just a few words about how that tracking system works on traceability.
Traceability is key important. As you are aware, I haven't mentioned you, but the Dominican Republic today is the leader on ethical cacao. What comprises ethical? Ethical is a holistic process. All the certification, as you are aware, all the certification require traceability. They want to know which region, which farm of the Dominican Republic it comes from. So we have a software that tracks everything. We need to. There is no way you can operate without traceability in today's chocolate world and in today's food industry also.
Great, and we, thank you again so much, Hector, as well as the team, the virtual team that brought us on that great tour. My apologies again for some of the technical challenges we had along the way. There are some wonderful questions that were not answered, but we're going to share those questions with the team at Rizek.
Say that those questions that were not answered, you can send to us by email and we'll answer them, so you can send them to everyone.
Yes. Fantastic. Thank you, Nadia. And again, my sincere thanks to each of you. You've done a wonderful job, and you got your exercise going through the large facility, and the explanations were wonderful. So thank you again, and thank you to everyone who participated on the call. We will have a recording of this as well as responses to the questions that were not answered. So thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
For sure. Thank you to all of you, and it's a pleasure. It was a pleasure.